Hi there, I'm Rowena. A few weeks ago, the bank called me about a $390,000 mortgage, in my name. But I never signed for it. I never even knew about it. Turns out, my sister did, without telling me. And my parents? They didn't just know, they helped her. They used my name, my credit, my entire identity like it was a family resource. And now, I'm the one picking up the pieces. But what hurts most isn't the money. It's wondering, how long had they been planning this? It was a Friday afternoon that had no intention of being memorable. I was wrapping up case files at the firm, thinking only about a glass of Cabernet and an early dinner. My next trial wasn't until Tuesday, and for once, there were no fire alarms ringing in my inbox. Just quiet, controlled, exactly how I liked it. The call came at 4:16 p.m. I almost didn't answer. Unknown number, South Carolina area code, spam, probably. But something in me picked up anyway. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was the way the sun caught the edge of my desk that second. Either way, I tapped accept. "Hello, this is Bryce from Horizon First Bank," said the voice, smooth but oddly hesitant. "May I speak with Rowena Hale?" "This is she," I replied, stretching my neck. "Is there a problem?" There was a pause, the kind that makes your stomach tense up before your brain catches up. "I'm calling to verify details on a mortgage loan application. $390,000. For a property on Porterfield Avenue. You're listed as cosigner." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Your name is on the cosign line. The primary applicant is Delphine Hale, your sister." I stood up from my chair without realizing it, heart crawling into my throat. "There's been a mistake," I said. "I haven't signed anything for Delphine, or anyone for that matter. I don't even know where Porterfield Avenue is." Bryce cleared his throat. "I understand. But the application was approved 2 days after submission. We always confirm with the cosigner in follow-up checks, especially when the amount exceeds $350,000. "Approved. 2 days. My blood ran cold. "I need you to email me every document tied to this loan, now." "Yes, ma'am. I'll send it right over." I ended the call without another word. My hand trembled slightly as I placed the phone on the desk. It was as if I had stepped outside my own life and into a stranger's chaos. Minutes later, the PDF landed in my inbox. I opened it, expecting, praying, it was some sort of clerical error. But there it was. My name, my social security number, my signature. Even the swoop on the R in Rowena was spot on. Something I picked up from Dad when I was 16, trying to make my signature look grown up. I felt like I'd been slapped. Not by a stranger. No, this was surgical. Familiar. Someone who knew me. Someone who had access. Suddenly my mind flashed back. Dad's birthday dinner 3 months ago. The way Mom handed me a small stack of forms and said, "Just sign these, it's for the insurance renewal, nothing serious." I'd barely glanced at them. I was distracted, laughing at one of Dad's stories about the neighbor's dog chasing a FedEx driver, and now, $390,000. On my name. I scrolled to the second page of the loan file. Primary applicant, Delphine Hale. I couldn't breathe. My stomach twisted like I'd swallowed glass. The noise of the office, phones ringing, printers humming, faded into white static. My little sister, Delphine. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was so calculated, so bold, it didn't feel real. This wasn't the girl who used to sneak into my room and borrow my lipstick. This wasn't the same woman who cried on my shoulder after her divorce. Or maybe it was. I remembered something else. Last spring. She forgot her ID at a gym and asked if she could use mine just for the waiver. I'd laughed it off then, but maybe that was the first step. I grabbed my phone again, hands ice cold now, and tapped on Silas Monroe's contact. He picked up on the first ring. "Ro?" he asked. "You okay?" "Silas," my voice cracked. "I think my family forged my name on a mortgage." He didn't pause. "Send me everything. I'm coming over." 10 minutes later, I sat on my apartment floor, legs crossed, the PDF open on my laptop in front of me. I couldn't stop staring at my own name printed in someone else's intent. It wasn't the money. They didn't steal my cash or even my credit. They stole my identity. They took the thing I built from scratch, my name, my bar license, my reputation, and handed it to a bank like it was nothing but a tool. I kept trying to think of a reason. A misunderstanding. Some wildly twisted favor gone wrong. But there wasn't one. They didn't ask. They didn't warn me. They just did it. And I was supposed to carry the cost. The doorbell rang. I didn't move right away. I was still processing one thing. If they did this, what else had they done? The door clicked once before I opened it. Silas didn't say a word. He just stepped inside like he'd done it 100 times before. In many ways, he had. Old friend, solid as granite, and exactly the person you wanted standing beside you when your life unraveled. I handed him the printouts I'd been gripping since I hit print on my home office desk 20 minutes earlier. The paper was still warm in my hands. He took the stack and moved to my kitchen counter, eyes scanning the pages without even pulling out his glasses. For a few long seconds, the only sound was the faint hum of my fridge. "Whoever did this," he said finally, "knows your handwriting too well." I didn't answer. My throat tightened as I watched him lay 2 signatures side by side, one from my official state ID and the other from the mortgage PDF. "They didn't just copy your signature," he said, pointing at the tail on the R. "They traced your rhythm. This isn't amateur work." My mouth was dry. "That loop. I picked it up from Mom. She always signs her letters with that little curl. I used to mimic it in high school. Thought it made me look elegant." He raised an eyebrow. "So, either Mom did this or someone who's watched you sign things for years." The silence stretched. "It gets worse," I said. I pulled out another sheet, an old email confirmation from Christmas Eve, just 3 months ago. Mom had slipped a folder across the table after dinner and said, "Just health insurance stuff. Sign here before dessert gets cold." The page had 2 signatures on it, mine and hers. I remembered the moment now, vivid as ever. She never even looked me in the eye. Silas leaned over it. "You think that's when she got the base copy?" I nodded slowly. "And the driver's license?" he asked. I flinched. Delphine borrowed it once, said her wallet got stolen and she needed an ID just to check into a temp job. I thought it was harmless. His eyes darkened. "Ro, they were building a profile, bit by bit. No one gets a $390,000 loan overnight unless they're working with inside info and zero conscience." I sat down on the armrest of my couch, trying to stay upright while my world tilted again. "This wasn't one impulsive choice," I whispered. "They plotted this. They knew you wouldn't question your family. That's why they picked you." I rubbed my temple, feeling the heat behind my eyes. "Because I make a living on credibility. Because my name opens doors." He didn't respond immediately. He just tapped the PDF again. "And now? They've kicked one open with it." I stood, pacing. "There were signs," I admitted. "Delphine suddenly had a new car. Mom started talking about renovations. I didn't think twice. Assumed Dad cashed out another bond." Silas crossed his arms. "We need to act now. First step, freeze your credit. Then we pull every report tied to your social security number, every open account, every data breach." "I'm not calling the fraud division yet," I said quickly. "Not until I know how deep this goes." He studied me. "You think they've done more?" I nodded. "I don't think this stops at one loan. I think it's layered. Accounts, credit, maybe even investments." He paused. "So what's your move?" "I want to talk to Delphine. Alone. I need to hear it from her." "You think she'll admit it?" "No," I said. "But I'll know if she lies." Silas didn't push back. He knew me well enough to know when I needed a beat to sort things myself. I walked to the window, watching the glow of streetlights settle across the street like a soft warning. It had gotten darker without me realizing it. The afternoon had bled into evening, and my apartment now felt like a glass cage. "She always said she hated confrontation," I murmured. But this was surgical. I picked up my phone, opened a new message, and typed 3 words. "We need to talk." I hit send before I could second-guess it. Then I leaned my head against the cool glass and whispered, "How long were you planning this, Del?" I didn't sleep. Not really. I dozed for 20 minutes sometime around 3, but even then my body wouldn't let go. My mind kept replaying the way Delphine used to tilt her head when she was lying, the shift in Mom's voice when she wanted something covered up, the way my dad would just go silent whenever the air got too thick to breathe. By morning, the unease in my chest hadn't eased. It had taken root. Light crept through the blinds, casting thin lines across the dining table, where I'd laid out everything Silas left me. A sea of printed emails, copies of loan forms, and annotated notes. My coffee sat untouched. I'd made it out of habit, black, no sugar. But my stomach was in no condition to cooperate. I powered up my laptop to cross-reference the approval email from Horizon Bank. It took longer than usual to boot. The login screen lagged, froze, then flashed once before settling. Weird. I clicked into the email client. Another hiccup, a slight delay. Not something that screamed red flag, but enough to make my lawyer's instincts twitch. I restarted it, hoping it was just a browser bug, but it kept happening. I stared at the screen, every cell in my body humming with quiet alarm. There's no such thing as a coincidence when you're dealing with stolen identity. I grabbed my phone and called Silas. "Something's wrong," I said, before he could even say hello. "I think someone's watching my laptop." Silas didn't argue. He asked a few questions, technical ones I barely followed, then said he'd call Lennox Vale, an old law school buddy turned forensic IT investigator. He owes me, and he's good. 10 minutes later, I was on a Zoom call with Lennox, who looked like he hadn't slept since Halloween. Hoodie, bloodshot eyes, and fingers that flew across the keyboard as he accessed my system remotely. "Okay, I'm in," he muttered, squinting at code lines scrolling down the screen. "Let's see what we're dealing with." "Wait." He stopped. "What?" I leaned forward. "There's a script in here," he said, now typing faster. "Keylogger. Not amateur stuff. It's been quietly collecting input for weeks." My heart clenched. Input like everything. Keystrokes, login history, passwords. It even mirrored clipboard content. I swallowed hard. Lennox's voice grew more cautious. "There's a secondary relay. Whoever set this up wanted to track, collect, and forward the data somewhere else." "Where?" I asked. He didn't speak right away. Then, "You're not going to like this." He shared his screen. Highlighted in yellow was a label embedded in the program, Verena.backmail. "Backmail?" I said aloud, confused. "Looks like a bad spelling of blackmail. Or maybe it's intentional. But Verena is my mother," I answered quietly. He nodded slowly. "Well, Rowena, your mom's name is literally coded into the back end of a data scraping program installed on your laptop." My skin went cold. "How?" "Looks like it was installed via USB. You don't use flash drives?" "No, but last month, Mom asked to check a turkey recipe on my laptop. Said her phone was acting up." Lennox gave a low whistle. "That'd do it." A new memory surfaced, clearer now. My birthday, back in January. Delphine showed up at my office late, said she wanted to surprise me with coffee and flowers. I'd stepped out for a client call. She was alone with my machine for at least 15 minutes. And 2 weeks later, the loan was approved. My hands tightened into fists. This wasn't an accident. This was coordinated. Silas called back just as Lennox sent over a synced app folder. "We've got something else," he said. "You'll want to see this." Inside the folder was a downloaded message export pulled from an iCloud sync, a single conversation time-stamped late January. "Verena, sem duok het roa, bat dao suli, dung de nobie." My Vietnamese is rusty, but even I understood that. "Seen everything. Start processing. Don't let her find out." I covered my mouth with one hand, fingers trembling. It wasn't a slip-up. It was a plan. Deliberate, ruthless. And it wasn't just Delphine. My mother was leading the whole damn thing. I felt something click into place inside me, a dull weight that turned sharp at the edges. "She's the one," I whispered. "My mother's the ringleader." Silas didn't argue. He just said, "I was afraid of that." I pulled out a yellow legal pad and started scribbling. Dates, file names, IP addresses. I began cross-referencing login times, noticing overlaps between nights Mom stayed over to help organize my taxes and unexplained data spikes on my router. "She always pretended she didn't understand tech," I muttered. That was the cover. I looked up at Silas. "Forget waiting on Delphine. I want the full picture. Every login, every dollar, every lie." His voice was quiet but firm. "We'll get it." By nightfall, my office lights were dimmed except for the lamp by my desk. The room was silent except for the scratch of my pen. I stared down at the mess of scribbles, outlines, arrows. Then I said it out loud because saying it made it real. They didn't just lie to me, they studied me. I shut off the lamp, and finally, I stopped feeling surprised. The sunrise filtered in through a narrow slit between my blinds. I hadn't planned to be awake that early, but sleep had long since given up on me. I lay still for a while, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of a city not yet in motion. There's a strange heaviness to that hour, a silence too honest to ignore. I finally got up, walked barefoot across the cold floor, and powered up my laptop again. This time, I wasn't checking emails. I needed numbers, proof of the damage. The screen lit up. I logged into my credit report portal. Breath held tight. 812. That had been my score the last time I checked, about 6 months ago. Now? 608? I blinked. Then I blinked again. That wasn't just a drop, it was a freefall. I scanned the report with shaking fingers. 4 new credit cards opened under my name, all maxed out. One of them had a $25,000 limit. Another showed a recent charge at a jewelry store in Charlotte. I'd never even been to that store. Not once. There was a loan application flagged as delinquent, another one with an auto dealer tied to a shipping address in Hilton Head. The name on every account was mine, but none of the activity was. I let out a breath that came out more like a choke. This wasn't just about a mortgage anymore. They were using me. Still. I opened my inbox hoping for some kind of update from Silas or Lennox. Instead, I saw a new message from a firm I'd interviewed with last month. A partner-track position in Atlanta I'd quietly applied to as a potential move. Subject, update on interview status, I clicked. The body of the message was 3 lines long. Dear Miss Hale, we regret to inform you that due to concerns raised in your recent background screening, we are no longer moving forward with your application. We wish you continued success in your career. That was it. No elaboration, no chance to explain, just gone. I stared at the screen, hands turning cold. Unfavorable credit activity. That's what they meant. They hadn't just stolen my future. They were actively closing doors I didn't even know were open. And then the next blow came. Another email. This one wasn't from a law firm. It was from the IRS. Subject, verification needed. 2024 filing activity under SSN, ending in 42X. The message read, we have flagged unusual financial activity tied to Schedule C filings for business income not previously reported. Please confirm the legitimacy of these entries. Failure to respond within 14 days may result in audit escalation. I felt like the room shifted. Schedule C? That's for business owners, sole proprietors. I'd never filed as one in my life. I scrolled down and saw the EIN number listed in the form. It wasn't familiar, but the mailing address was. Hilton Head, our old family summer house. I called Silas, fingers trembling. He picked up on the second ring. I just got flagged by the IRS, I told him, trying to keep my voice level. There are business filings I never made, linked to Hilton Head. There was silence on the line. Then, we'll go over every line. I'll loop Lennox back in. 15 minutes later, Lennox was on the call. He pulled up the digital trail and confirmed 3 separate Schedule C forms filed from my SSN, 2 of them tied to shell companies. One had a contact email, nearly identical to mine, but ending in .consult instead of .com. This is deeper than just theft, Lennox said grimly. They've set up a parallel version of you, a ghost Rowena. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the monitor as the shape of my life distorted before me. Row, Silas said gently. If this hits your current job, there's a chance they'll open an internal review. They'll see liabilities, credit flags, legal inconsistencies. I could lose my bar license, I whispered. You're not just the victim here, he said. You're the asset. They're draining everything you've spent your life building. I sat back, the weight of it pinning me in place. I thought of every sleepless night in law school, every win I fought for in court, every moment I held back just to protect this name, this version of me. I opened my leather journal, the one I kept for thoughts too raw for email. I wrote, they're not just betraying me, they're trying to replace me. And then came the final gut punch. A new email popped in. Subject line, policy risk notification, professional liability insurance. The body read, due to recent shifts in credit reliability, Your standing with our underwriting department has been flagged. Please submit updated financial documents within 10 business days to avoid suspension. I closed the laptop slowly. This wasn't just about money, or lies, or loans. This was about survival now. I stood and whispered aloud to the empty room. If they're not stopping, neither am I. I spent the next few hours sifting through paperwork, scanning emails, and uploading files to Silas and Lennox like I was assembling a war map. I didn't even realize how late the afternoon had gotten until the light in my apartment turned from golden to steel gray. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't even showered. All I knew was that my life, my real life, was dissolving beneath layers of someone else's decisions. My phone buzzed. Silas. I answered on the first ring. Tell me you found something. I wish I hadn't, he said, voice flat. Rowena, the income verification on the mortgage? It's signed by your father. I froze. No, that's not possible. My dad. He doesn't even handle our taxes. He did this time, Silas said. And I triple-checked. Same handwriting from other official forms he's filed. Same signature. He sent the scan over. I clicked. There it was. Jasper Hale scrawled beneath the words, Employment verified by immediate family member. I couldn't speak. I just sat there staring at the page, my stomach folding in on itself. I had seen that signature 100 times. On school permission slips, on birthday cards, on the dotted line of my college loan cosign. He hadn't been tricked. He'd participated. It wasn't just my mother. It wasn't just Delphine. It was all of them. I stared out the window, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I didn't care if they thought it was for Delphine's sake, or for the family, or out of desperation. He knew. He signed off on my name, knowing it would break me if it ever surfaced. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Minutes later, Lennox called. You're gonna want to sit down, he said. I'm already sitting, I replied, trying to sound steadier than I felt. I pulled a voice archive off Horizon's call logs from 2 months ago. Someone verified the loan over the phone. So? It was your dad. He sent the audio file. I hit play. Rowena Hale has excellent credit standing. She's my daughter. Yes, you can proceed. She's aware of the loan details. I stopped the recording. That one line, she's aware. It rang louder than any accusation. My father hadn't just signed paperwork. He had given them his voice, his approval, his lie. I was done staring at screens. I grabbed my car keys, threw on the nearest jacket, and drove. They lived just 15 minutes away, but in that drive, I passed through 100 different versions of myself. Daughter, victim, lawyer, stranger. When I pulled into their driveway, the sun was low, casting long shadows across the grass. My father was out front, trimming the hedges, calm, like nothing had collapsed. I stepped out, holding a folder. Dad, I called. He looked up, wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. Hey, sweetheart, he said. You okay? I held up the folder. Let's not play this game. He took one look at my face and knew. I opened the folder, showed him the printed email and audio transcript. You lied to a bank. You said I knew about the loan. You signed forms. You vouched for income that wasn't mine. He exhaled heavily and set down the trimmers. I just wanted Delphine to have a shot, he said. I blinked. What? He shrugged, eyes suddenly glassy. You already have everything, Ro. The career, the respect, the money. Delphine, she's been trying. She just needed a boost. A boost? My voice cracked. So you dismantled my life to give her a shortcut? It wasn't meant to go this far. That excuse is older than your damn lawnmower. The front door opened. My mother stepped out, arms crossed, face unreadable. What's going on? She asked, already knowing the answer. I turned to her. You knew. You orchestrated this. Her voice didn't rise. Don't dramatize, Rowena. This is family. You're blowing this out of proportion. I laughed. Short, bitter. You installed spyware on my laptop, opened credit cards in my name, let Delphine steal my license, and you call this protection? Her eyes narrowed. We're your blood. You don't take your family to court. No, I said, stepping closer, voice even. But you also don't let your family set you on fire to keep their hands warm. She flinched. I looked at both of them, and something inside me snapped into place. I'm warning you, I said clearly. If this continues, if I find one more document, one more login, one more false record in my name, I will file formal charges. And I will name every single one of you. Silence. For once, not even my mother had something to say. I turned and walked back to my car. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. On the way home, the sky turned orange behind me. Streetlights flickered on. The world moved as if nothing had changed, but for me, everything had. When I got inside, I tossed my keys on the table, dropped the folder next to my laptop, and pulled out a new file, labeled in thick black ink, Family Fraud, Phase 1. I sat down and opened a blank page. This wasn't just personal anymore, it was legal. If they wanted war, I muttered, they just got one. The next morning, Charleston was cold and wet. Gray light slipped in through my blinds like judgment. I didn't sleep, I didn't even pretend to. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, the words from last night still echoing in my head like a threat and a promise all at once. They wanted war. Fine. I was done tiptoeing around their lies. Just as I reached for my laptop, Lennox texted. Lennox, call me, now. I grabbed my phone. What is it? I found a ghost email, he said. It's set up to mirror yours. Same name, same photo, same footer. Slight variation in the domain. I sat up straighter. Show me. Moments later, an inbox appeared on my screen. rowena.hale.consult@gmail.com. The emails were slick, polished, pitched as if written by me, offering investment opportunities under the name Riverpine Growth Fund. My jaw clenched as I scrolled. One email even had my full bar license ID in the signature. My actual signature copied perfectly. You see the Zoom invite? Lennox asked. I clicked the link. It routes to a Zoom that uses a filter. Whoever was impersonating you did it in real time. Rage turned into nausea. Delphine. He didn't disagree. She hadn't just used my name. She'd turned it into bait. I closed the tab, bile rising in my throat. Then came the real punch in the chest, an email forwarded to me by Silas. The subject line read, "You promised it was safe." The message was from a woman named Agnes Merritt, 69, retired school teacher from Beaufort. Rowena, she wrote, you said I could trust you. I believed in you. I put my savings into that fund. I froze. I had never seen this woman in my life, but she believed we had met. She attached a screenshot from a Zoom call. My face, my voice, my mannerisms, calm, convincing. This was from last month, she wrote. You even told me your mother was helping manage the fund. I thought that was so nice. I sat very still, staring at my screen. A hollow feeling spread through my chest like smoke. Lennox, I whispered, I need you to verify something. He was already on it. I'm pulling metadata from her recording, he said. We'll know who it really was. Within 10 minutes, he had it. It's Delphine, wearing a wig. Voice filters solid, but look at this. Frame by frame. You can see the distortion glitches at the jawline. I leaned closer. There it was. She'd dressed up like me, worn my smile like a costume, and then conned a 70-year-old woman out of her retirement. I stood, pacing, arms crossed so tightly across my chest I could hardly breathe. This wasn't just identity theft. It was identity invasion. I grabbed my phone and called Silas. We're going federal, I said. He didn't flinch. Good, because this crossed from fraud into elder abuse and securities crime. We're talking FBI? Yes, he said. And potentially SEC. You ready for that? I didn't hesitate. More than ever. We made a list. Cease and desist letters to Google. Formal complaint filings, IRS alert. A dedicated fraud packet for every investor we could identify. And a flag notification to the Charleston Bar Association. On my terms, before anyone else weaponized it. Silas met me at my place that afternoon. Write the affidavit, he said. Name everyone. I sat at my kitchen counter, typed their names with hands that didn't shake anymore. Verena Hale, Jasper Hale, Delphine Hale. Criminal conspiracy, financial fraud, identity misuse, elder exploitation, unlawful impersonation. Each word felt like a blade being forged. I signed it, emailed Silas a copy, then printed another for my own records. I placed it in a binder, right behind two new tabs. Family, evidence, Damage. I stood up, staring down at what used to be my bloodline, and what now amounted to my case file. They didn't just borrow my name, I said aloud. They built an empire on it. I closed the binder. This is what they wanted, and this is what they'll get. By the time the clock struck 1 p.m., my email pinged. It was from Agnes again, this time with an audio file attached and a one-line message. This is what convinced me. I clicked the file. The voice that came through my speakers stopped me cold. My daughter Rowena is overseeing this fund personally. I promise you, Mrs. Merritt, it's secure. You're in good hands. It was my mother. Her cadence, her confidence, her betrayal. She hadn't just signed things behind my back. She had stood in front of them, sold them on my name with all the grace and polish of someone who genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. Or worse, didn't care that it was wrong. I sat back in my chair, a quiet storm building inside me. 10 minutes later, I was on the road. I didn't text, didn't call, I just drove. The drive to my parents' house used to feel nostalgic. Now it felt clinical, calculated, like walking into court. Verena opened the door wearing her pearls, an apron, and the face she reserved for brunches and Christmas cards. "Rowena," she said like nothing had happened. I stepped in, bypassing pleasantries. "I want to talk." She led me into the sunroom, her hands folded neatly on her lap like this was a PTA meeting. I didn't waste time. I hit play. The voice memo filled the space, and as it played, I watched her jaw tighten. When it ended, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "I did what I had to. You wouldn't help your sister, so I did." I stared at her, stunned by the ease of her answer. No shame, no hesitation. Just a woman who'd convinced herself that betrayal was an act of maternal love. "You sold my name," I said quietly. "You have so much, Rowena," she said, eyes glassy. Delphine had nothing. She needed a break. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe I'd once thought we were alike. "You don't get to decide what I give," I snapped. "And you sure as hell don't get to steal it when I don't offer." Verena stood. "You're being dramatic. And you're being criminal." I turned to leave, but she followed, steps composed like she still thought she could contain the damage with grace. At the front door, Delphine appeared. She had tears in her eyes and a binder in her hands, the one I had dropped off 2 days earlier. "Please don't do this," she whispered. "This doesn't have to go public. It's family. It's complicated." I looked at her for a long time. I thought about her childhood, her late-night phone calls, the way she used to crawl into my bed when thunder scared her. But then I thought about Agnes, and the money, and the lies. I stepped past her and said with finality, "Then maybe it's time family stops being a shield for crime." She didn't follow. I walked back to the car with no one behind me. Inside, I sat for a full minute before turning the key. The house behind me, my childhood home, was still. Frozen in a version of the past I couldn't crawl back into. Before I pulled away, I glanced once more at the upstairs window that used to be mine. The curtains hadn't changed since high school. It should have made me sad. It didn't. By evening, Silas and I sat in his office, the FBI case packet spread across the table. Names, evidence, timeline. He handed me the last document to sign. "Once this is in their system," he said, "there's no walking it back." I nodded. "That's the point." I signed. As we stood to leave, Silas put a hand on my shoulder. "You're not just doing this for you." "I know," I said. "I'm doing it for every person they thought wouldn't fight back." When I stepped out into the Charleston night, the air felt different. Not lighter, not easier, just clearer. The following morning, I didn't need an alarm. My body woke itself, wired, alert. The kind of alert that doesn't come from caffeine or fear, but from knowing something irreversible was about to begin. Charleston's skies were gray, flat, and cold, the kind of weather that didn't beg for optimism. I got dressed in silence, black blazer, soft blouse, low heels, my version of armor. The file folders were already in my bag, the paperwork signed. Silas had confirmed the FBI was coordinating with Horizon First Bank for a meeting. That was the word Frank Delaney, the branch manager, used when he called my parents. "There's been a discrepancy in your daughter's financial record. We'd appreciate it if the family could come in. Shouldn't take more than half an hour. I sat in the passenger seat of Silas's car, folder clutched like a shield. He didn't talk much. He didn't need to. This wasn't strategy anymore. This was execution. Inside the bank's conference room, the table had been cleared, but for 3 cold bottles of water and a crisp manila folder with their names on the front. The room felt sanitized, prepped, waiting for surgery. Verena walked in first, in pearls, as if she were about to negotiate a charity auction. Jasper followed, neutral and unreadable. Delphine arrived last, her hair in a bun too tight, her eyes darting. No one greeted me. Inspector Dallas entered a few minutes later, smooth and composed. He nodded at me, then turned to the others. Thank you for coming. This meeting was called to clarify some material inconsistencies regarding financial activity under Rowena Hale's identity. Verena gave a tight-lipped smile. I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding. I reached into my bag and pulled out the binder. Let's clear it up then. I opened it and laid out the exhibits. Forged signatures, mirrored email addresses, Zoom screenshots, voice logs, shell company listings, credit statements. All tied back to the same 3 names. Verena, Jasper, Delphine. Verena's smile cracked. You would throw your family under the bus for a little reputation? I didn't blink. You threw me under. I'm just climbing out. The silence that followed wasn't stunned. It was indignant. I raised you better than this, she said sharply. No, I replied. You trained me to stay silent, and I finally broke the training. Delphine's voice shook as she asked, You brought the FBI into this? I nodded once. You did that, when you brought innocent people into your scheme. As if on cue, Inspector Dallas set a device on the table and pressed play. A voice memo filled the room. Verena's voice, clear, confident. Rowena is overseeing this fund personally, I promise you. It's secure. The voice of a mother speaking with complete authority, to a stranger, about her daughter's non-existent business. Delphine cracked first. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. I just wanted the house. I thought we could manage it. Mom said you'd never find out. Her words hit like static. Useless. Late. I kept waiting for you to notice, she went on, breaking down. But you didn't, so I thought, maybe we'd pull it off. Verena snapped, Delphine! But Delphine wasn't defending anymore. She's right. We studied her. We knew her logins, her tells. She was the perfect mask. Inspector Dallas spoke next, calm but absolute. Verena Hale, Jasper Hale, Delphine Hale. You are now under formal investigation for identity theft, fraud, and financial conspiracy. All of your known bank accounts will be frozen pending a full forensic audit. Please remain seated. Jasper didn't flinch, didn't look at anyone. Verena muttered, We're not criminals. Dallas didn't even blink. We'll let the records decide. 2 agents stepped into the room. I didn't gloat, I didn't cry, I simply turned my gaze away as they were read their rights. Delphine looked back at me, lips trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. I shook my head. So am I. But sorry doesn't fix this. She didn't argue. I gathered the binder and stood. As I passed the threshold of that room, I could feel the weight of what I'd just done settle onto my shoulders. Not guilt, not relief, just the cold clarity of knowing the truth was finally louder than the lies. I turned to Silas outside and said, Let's finish what we started. 3 weeks passed, and with them, a strange silence settled over Charleston. Not the kind of silence that follows peace. The kind that comes after a storm's center has shifted, but the wreckage still hums beneath your feet. On a gray March morning, I stepped into the federal courthouse. The marble floor echoed with every click of my heels. I wasn't nervous, not anymore. Not since the truth had been spoken aloud in front of people who mattered, but my chest still carried a quiet ache, an ache for what could never be repaired. The courtroom was full. Victims lined the benches behind the prosecution's table, men and women with weary eyes and folders in their laps. Agnes Merritt sat near the aisle, her hand resting on a younger woman's shoulder. I didn't know the girl, but I knew that look. The one that said, Please tell me this ends today. Judge Halberd called the room to order. I took the stand. My voice didn't crack. Not until I said Delphine's name. And even then, it was more breath than sound. I told the story as plainly as I could, how my name had been signed, how the accounts had been created, how the people I was supposed to trust most turned me into a mask they could wear to scam others. I didn't make it emotional. I made it irrefutable. When I stepped down, I didn't look toward the defense table. I didn't need to see if they watched me. The sentencing came that afternoon. Jasper Hale, my father, received 18 years. No possibility of parole for 10. Verena, my mother, was given 15. She blinked once but didn't show anything else. Delphine was sentenced to 12 years, ordered to pay restitution, and permanently barred from working in any professional advisory or fiduciary role again. Someone gasped behind me when they read Delphine's punishment. I didn't turn around. Judge Halberd's voice was calm but heavy. Family trust is not a license for crime. Betrayal doesn't become less corrosive just because it's signed in blood. And just like that, it was done. I stepped outside into a sunlit corridor and let the air settle into my lungs. It didn't feel like justice. Not entirely. It felt like an ending that cost too much to celebrate. A few days later, I returned to the house I grew up in, alone for the last time. I didn't go to take revenge. I went to collect what was mine: 2 old photo albums, a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and a locket my grandmother gave me when I turned 13. The house was empty. The walls didn't whisper. The furniture didn't creak like it remembered me. I moved room to room like a stranger. When I got to my old bedroom, I paused at the window, the one I used to lean out of during thunderstorms. I saw a framed photo on the shelf. Me at 9, missing a front tooth, sand in my hair. My father's arm around me. The love was real once, but they buried it in fear and greed. I left the photo on the shelf. 3 weeks after sentencing, Reclaim and Rise officially launched, an outreach initiative for survivors of familial fraud and betrayal. The logo was simple, a broken circle stitched together at one edge. Agnes joined as a speaker. That same night, after our first group session, a young woman, barely 22, hugged me outside the meeting room. She didn't say much, just this: "You made me believe I can speak out. Thank you." I squeezed her hand. No grand speeches, just a nod, because I knew what that silence cost. The following Sunday, I found myself sitting across from Silas in my office, sharing black coffee and late-day sun. He leaned back. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I looked at my hands, at the faint scars left from where my nails dug too hard during that first week of unraveling. "Forgiveness is for peace," I said, "but they don't get to come back into my life." He didn't push, and I didn't cry. The first Reclaim and Rise conference took place at a small community center downtown. Folding chairs, potluck snacks, and an open mic. I watched as survivors took the stage, shaky at first, then stronger with each word. When it was my turn, I walked to the podium with no notes. I looked out at the crowd, dozens of faces, all with different stories, all carrying pieces of the same pain. "I used to think blood made a family," I said. "Now I know, it's truth that does." The room didn't erupt, it breathed. I smiled, not because I was healed, but because I was still here, still standing. As I close this chapter of my life, I want to leave you with this. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that family should never be a weapon used against you. Trust is not unconditional. It is earned, protected, and when broken, it demands accountability, even if it comes from the people who once held your hand through childhood storms. Speaking up was the hardest thing I've ever done, but silence would have cost me more. Silence would have buried me under the weight of someone else's lies. To anyone out there watching, if someone you love crosses the line from love to manipulation, from support to sabotage, you have the right to say, "No more." Your boundaries are not betrayal. Your strength is not cruelty. Protecting your peace is not a punishment to them. It's a promise to yourself. So I ask you now, have you ever had to choose truth over family? What does forgiveness mean to you when the people who hurt you share your last name? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you or resonated in any way, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't speak to you, tell me why. I want to understand your perspective. And if you're still here with me at the end of this video, I hope you'll subscribe for more real, raw, and powerful stories, just like this one. This isn't just about entertainment. It's about healing, connection, and giving voice to stories that too often go unheard, because your story might be the one that helps someone else survive theirs.